They're small, they're humble, they sit quietly in the fridge, waiting to be boiled, scrambled, or gently cooked in a pan. And yet, the simple egg may be one of the most misunderstood and underestimated foods, especially for those of us over 60. You may have heard, eggs are bad for cholesterol. Too many eggs will hurt your heart. One a week is enough. But what if science and real-life experience tells a different story? In this video, we explore what really happens to your body when you eat 2 eggs every day as a senior, including the benefits, the concerns, and how to eat them in a way that protects your heart, sharpens your mind, and supports your strength. Let's begin. Part 1. Eggs and protein, fueling muscle after 60. As we age, one of the most silent but serious challenges we face is muscle loss. It doesn't happen overnight. It shows up quietly, when the stairs feel steeper, when the legs get tired faster, when we stop standing as long or walking as far. This natural decline in muscle mass, known as sarcopenia, affects nearly every person over 60, and if left unaddressed, it can lead to falls, fractures, loss of independence, and even a shorter lifespan. But here's the good news. Your body still wants to stay strong. It just needs the right kind of fuel, and that's where eggs come in. Each egg contains about 6 to 7 grams of high-quality complete protein, meaning it has all 9 essential amino acids your body needs to build and repair muscle. Unlike some plant-based proteins, the protein in eggs is easily absorbed and especially effective for older adults whose digestion may be slower or less efficient. When you eat 2 eggs a day, you're giving your body 12 to 14 grams of clean functional protein right at the start of your day. After age 60, your body becomes less efficient at turning protein into muscle. This means you actually need more protein per meal, not less, to maintain strength and function. Eating protein-rich foods like eggs in the morning helps prevent muscle wasting in the legs and arms, improve balance and walking stability, reduce the risk of falls and fractures, preserve independence in daily tasks like standing, lifting, and bathing. Even if you don't exercise much, simply giving your muscles enough fuel can slow down weakness, and in many cases, even reverse it gradually. Another important note, eggs are soft, easy to chew, and gentle on digestion, perfect for seniors with dental issues or poor appetite. They're also quick to prepare, affordable, and versatile. Whether boiled, poached, or softly scrambled, eggs can be enjoyed by almost anyone, even those with limited cooking skills or energy. A simple morning habit. Starting your day with 2 eggs provides not just protein, but sustained energy and reduced cravings. It helps keep your blood sugar stable and may reduce snacking on sugary or processed foods later. Small habit, big impact. 2 eggs a day may seem simple, even ordinary, but for an older body, it's targeted nutrition that supports strength, steadiness, and self-reliance. In the quiet work of daily meals, your body rebuilds, slowly, wisely, gratefully. Part 2, brain benefits, choline and memory. As we get older, many of us worry about our memory. We forget names, lose track of what we were about to do. Sometimes we enter a room and stand still, wondering, why did I come in here? It's easy to laugh it off, but deep inside, there's often a quiet fear. Is my mind slipping? Is this the beginning of something worse? The brain, like every part of the body, needs nourishment, not just rest, but real nutrients. And one of the most powerful, yet often overlooked nutrients for brain health is choline. Choline is a vital compound that supports memory, focus, and overall brain function. It helps your body produce acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that keeps the brain alert and allows messages to pass smoothly between cells. Unfortunately, many older adults don't get enough choline, especially if they avoid eggs out of cholesterol concerns. But here's the good news. One large egg yolk contains about 125 milligrams of choline, which is more than 25% of the recommended daily intake for older women and over 20% for older men. Eating 2 eggs a day provides nearly half your daily choline needs in a natural, absorbable form. As we age, our brain's ability to repair itself slows down. We also experience changes in blood flow, inflammation, and oxidative stress, all of which affect cognition. Choline supports sharper memory, faster recall of names and details, better mood and emotional balance, protection against cognitive decline. Some studies even show that higher choline intake is linked to a lower risk of Alzheimer's and dementia, especially in those who start early and stay consistent. It won't reverse memory loss overnight, but it's one of the quiet protectors. Working in the background each day, you nourish your mind. Unlike many brain supplements, choline from eggs is easy on the stomach, affordable, and comes with bonus nutrients like vitamin B12, selenium, and healthy fats, all important for seniors' neurological health. Best of all, it's just food. No pills, no side effects, just a warm, familiar meal that quietly helps you stay mentally strong. Your mind carries decades of memories of people you've loved, places you've been, and lessons you've learned. It deserves care, it deserves nourishment, and it deserves the simple gift of choline, 2 eggs at a time. Part 3, eyesight protection, lutein and zeaxanthin. One of the quietest losses that comes with age is our vision. It doesn't happen all at once, just a little more blur, a bit more glare, a dimming of color or light. Reading becomes harder. Driving at night feels less safe. Faces lose sharpness. Labels look smaller than they used to. While we often accept this as just aging, the truth is, your eyes can be nourished, protected, and supported, especially with the help of 2 powerful nutrients, lutein and zeaxanthin. And one of the best sources of both, the humble egg. Why eggs help protect aging eyes? Lutein and zeaxanthin are carotenoids, antioxidants that gather in the retina, especially in the macula, the part of your eye responsible for sharp central vision. They act like natural sunglasses, filtering harmful blue light, reducing oxidative damage, and strengthening the cells in your eyes. While dark leafy greens are known for these nutrients, the form found in egg yolks is more bioavailable, meaning your body absorbs and uses it more efficiently. That means 2 eggs a day can provide a meaningful dose of eye protecting nutrition, especially for seniors. As we grow older, the risk of eye conditions like cataracts, macular degeneration AMD, retinal thinning increases dramatically. These conditions don't just make life less convenient, they can slowly take away your independence. When you can't read medication labels, recognize faces, or feel confident walking outdoors, everything changes. But here's the good news. Lutein and zeaxanthin have been shown in multiple studies to lower the risk of age-related eye disease, especially when consumed consistently over time. You don't need expensive eye supplements or complicated routines. You don't need kale smoothies or pills with names you can't pronounce. You just need 2 eggs. And for those who prefer soft, easy to digest foods, eggs are ideal. Poached, boiled, or gently scrambled, the nutrients stay intact and your eyes stay supported. Your eyes have witnessed so much: smiles, tears, sunrises, and the faces of people you love. They deserve care. They deserve protection. And they deserve the quiet strength of 2 eggs served with intention. Feed your vision, not just to see, but to keep seeing the beauty in life. Part 4, the cholesterol confusion, what the research says now. For many years, eggs were caught in the middle of a health debate. You may have heard, eggs are too high in cholesterol. Don't eat the yolk, it'll raise your cholesterol levels. Limit to 1 egg per week or none at all. Um, because of this, many seniors avoided eggs for decades, especially with heart concerns. But here's the truth. Modern science tells a very different story now. It's true that eggs contain cholesterol, about 186 milligrams per yolk. But studies over the past 10 to 15 years have shown that for the majority of people, the cholesterol you eat does not significantly affect the cholesterol in your bloodstream. Why? Because your liver already produces cholesterol every day. When you eat more cholesterol from food, your liver produces less, keeping your levels balanced. And when you eat less, your liver often produces more to compensate. This means that moderate egg consumption, 1 to 2 per day, is considered safe and even beneficial for most healthy adults, including seniors. If you already have heart disease, diabetes, or very high LDL, bad cholesterol, it's still important to be cautious. But that doesn't mean you have to cut eggs out entirely. Doctors now recommend focus on how you prepare your eggs. Boiled or poached is better than fried. Watch what you eat with your eggs. Bacon, butter, white toast can increase risk. Emphasize whole foods, fiber, and vegetables alongside eggs to support balance. Monitor your cholesterol with your healthcare provider if concerned. In fact, the nutrients in eggs, like omega-3 fats, choline, and antioxidants, may help reduce inflammation, which supports heart health overall. It's common for people to eat only the egg whites, but the truth is all the choline, lutein, and vitamin D are in the yolk. The yolk contains healthy fats that support brain and hormone function. Eating the whole egg provides balance, not just protein, but complete nourishment. So, unless your doctor advises otherwise, don't be afraid of the yolk. It's where most of the magic lives. For too long, eggs were misunderstood, but science has caught up and it tells us this: when eaten in moderation and prepared with care, eggs are not the enemy of the heart. They're an ally, simple, powerful, and deeply nourishing. Let go of old fears, embrace new understanding, and give your heart the chance to be supported, not by extremes, but by balance. Part 5: How to Eat Eggs for Maximum Benefit. It's not just what you eat, it's how you eat it that makes the difference. Eggs are powerful, yes, but like any natural food, they do their best work when eaten the right way, in the right combinations, and at the right time of day. So let's explore some simple, senior friendly tips to help you get the most health benefits from your daily eggs while protecting your heart, brain, and body. The way you cook eggs can either preserve or damage their nutrients. Best methods: boiled, soft or hard; poached, lightly scrambled with olive oil or avocado oil; steamed. Avoid deep fried eggs, overcooking the yolk until dry or brown; cooking with processed meats like bacon or sausage, high in salt and fat. Why it matters: high heat can destroy antioxidants like lutein and oxidize cholesterol in the yolk, which may not be ideal for heart health. Eating eggs alone is fine, but pairing them with fiber helps slow digestion, balance blood sugar, and even reduce cholesterol absorption. Try eggs plus sautéed spinach or kale; eggs plus avocado plus whole grain toast; eggs plus oats on the side; eggs, tomato, and cucumber slices. This pairing also helps with digestive comfort, especially helpful for older adults who experience bloating or constipation. A boiled egg is healthy, but when you add lots of salt, mayonnaise, or heavy oils, the balance can shift. Instead, use a pinch of sea salt or herbs like dill, paprika, or turmeric; a drizzle of olive oil instead of butter; Greek yogurt instead of mayo in egg salad. Little changes protect your heart without sacrificing flavor. For seniors, starting the day with protein is one of the best ways to stabilize energy, mood, and focus. 2 eggs at breakfast can prevent muscle loss throughout the day, reduce blood sugar spikes from carbs, curb sugar cravings and afternoon fatigue, support better appetite control. And since they're easy to chew and digest, they're perfect for those who don't feel hungry in the morning. Eggs are not magic on their own, but when prepared with care and eaten as part of a nourishing, balanced meal, they become one of the most powerful tools you have to stay strong, clear minded, and independent. Simple, gentle, time tested. Sometimes that's exactly what your body needs. In a world filled with complicated diets, expensive supplements, and endless health advice, sometimes the simplest choices still hold the most power. 2 eggs. That's all. Boiled, poached, scrambled softly in a pan. But behind that quiet habit is a world of nourishment for your muscles, your memory, your eyes, and your heart. Let's take a gentle moment to remember what we've learned. Eggs provide high quality protein that supports strength and balance as you age. They deliver choline, a vital nutrient that protects memory and cognitive health. They contain lutein and zeaxanthin, antioxidants that guard your vision from age related damage. Modern research shows that moderate egg consumption is safe and even beneficial for most seniors. And when prepared with care and paired with wholesome foods, eggs become a daily act of healing. This isn't about fads or fear. It's about nourishment, consistency, and listening to what your body needs, not just once in a while, but every single day. If you've spent years avoiding eggs because of old beliefs, if you've been unsure whether they were helpful or harmful, I invite you to try again, not just to eat differently, but to live differently, with less confusion and more trust. You've cared for others your whole life. Now it's time to care for yourself with small, loving habits that carry big meaning. Let's share together. Do you eat eggs regularly? Have you noticed any changes in your strength, memory, or mood since adding them to your routine? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may give comfort or courage to someone else who's just beginning their own journey toward better health. If this video nourished your heart, please like this video. It helps us reach more seniors who need gentle, trusted guidance. Subscribe to True Senior Wisdom for weekly tips on aging with clarity, peace, and dignity. And don't forget to turn on the bell so you never miss a reminder to care for yourself, body, mind, and spirit. Here at True Senior Wisdom, we don't just talk about food. We talk about what it means to feel strong, to stay independent, and to live this chapter of life with softness and strength. You are not too old to grow, not too late to change, and never too far from feeling well again.